Far below the last shimmer of sunlight, a small human machine hangs in the black water, its lights pushing through a silence older than cities. Outside the glass, there is no sky, no horizon, no sound of wind or birds, only drifting particles, pale creatures, and the slow pressure of miles of ocean pressing down from above. Somewhere beneath that fragile sphere of metal, the seafloor waits. Mountains no human has seen, canyons wider than nations, cold plains where life moves without daylight, and trenches so deep they feel less like places on Earth than entrances into another world. For most of history, the ocean has been the border of human knowledge. We sailed across it, mapped its coastlines, pulled food from it, laid cables through it, and built entire civilizations beside it. Yet the deeper ocean remained hidden, not because it was far away, but because it was difficult to enter. Water becomes darkness, darkness becomes pressure, pressure becomes a wall. Even today, much of the deep sea floor has not been seen directly by human eyes, and modern mapping is still revealing the shape of a planet we thought we already understood. Science has given us pieces of this submerged world. Sonar has traced ridges, volcanoes, abyssal plains, and trenches. Robotic vehicles have filmed hydrothermal vents, deep corals, glassy animals, and strange communities living in places where sunlight never reaches. Oceanographers know that the sea is not empty space between continents. It helps move heat around the globe, stores carbon, feeds weather systems, carries trade, supports life, and holds records of Earth's restless interior. But a complete exploration of the entire ocean would be something different. It would not be one discovery, it would be a change in human awareness. So tonight, we will imagine a plausible future in which humanity finally turns its full attention downward, not to conquer the ocean, and not to fill it with fantasy, but to see it clearly, layer by layer, from the bright surface to the deepest trenches. We will follow the ships, the drones, the submersibles, the scientists, and the ordinary people whose lives would be changed by what is found. We will ask what happens when the last blank space on Earth begins to disappear, and what it does to a species that has always needed mystery, fear, and wonder. If you enjoy slow journeys through hidden worlds, you can like this video, subscribe for more quiet documentaries, and write in the comments where you are watching from tonight. It is always strange and gently beautiful to imagine all these distant rooms, cities, and sleeping places connected by the same calm voice. The ocean is waiting, not loudly, but patiently, with its cold darkness open beneath everything we know on Earth tonight. Now lower the light, or let the room go dark. Take one slow breath. Let the noise of the modern world drift upward, like bubbles returning to the surface, and begin the descent. The descent begins so gently that, at first, it almost feels like nothing is happening. The surface remains above, bright and restless, trembling with small waves that catch the last pieces of daylight. The support ship drifts in the swell, like a small island of steel, its decks washed with salt, its antennas turning slowly against the sky. Then the submersible slips beneath the waterline, and the world changes at once. The sound of the ship fades, the wind disappears, the ocean closes over the glass, and the blue light folds around you like a curtain. For a few minutes, the sea is still familiar,
Sunlight falls through it in long, moving columns. Tiny bubbles crawl upward along the outside of the viewport. Near the surface, life is everywhere, even when it seems empty. Plankton drift in the water like dust in a cathedral beam. Small fish turn together in silver flashes. The hull gives a soft mechanical hum, but beyond it, there is only water, motion, and the quiet knowledge that the solid world has been left behind. Human beings have spent thousands of years traveling across this upper skin of the ocean, crossing it in wooden boats, iron ships, submarines, and satellites of commerce. Yet even here, in the first shallow blue, the true scale of the sea begins to appear. From space, the ocean looks simple. It is the blue part of the planet, the background against which continents stand out. On a school map, it is often treated as an open field between countries, a surface to be crossed, divided, named,
colored. But inside it, the ocean is not flat, not empty, and not truly familiar. It is a three-dimensional world with layers, borders, climates, migrations, and hidden landscapes. The surface is only the ceiling of a vast room. Beneath it are entire regions where light weakens, temperatures change, pressures rise, and life adjusts itself to conditions that would end a human body almost instantly. This is the first transformation that would come from exploring the entire ocean. Humanity would stop thinking of the sea as one thing. The word ocean would no longer feel like a simple blue space on a map. It would become a vertical planet with neighborhoods stacked on top of one another. The bright surface where sailors and swimmers live would be only the opening layer. Below it, other worlds would begin, each with its own rhythm, its own chemistry, its own animals, and its own way of measuring time. To explore all of it would mean learning to think downward, not only outward. The submersible continues sinking, and the surface above becomes a trembling mirror. The support ship, visible a moment ago, is now a shadow broken by waves. Then it disappears. This small loss carries more emotion than expected. It is not danger yet. The crew is safe, the machines are working, and the dive is controlled. Still, something ancient in the human mind notices the separation. The air is above. The people are above. Warmth, sunlight, weather, voices, land, and rescue are above. Down here, every meter adds distance from the world the body understands. If humanity truly explored the entire ocean, this feeling would become familiar to many more people. Not everyone would descend personally, of course. Most would watch through screens, live feeds, maps, and recorded missions. But even from a living room, a classroom, or a museum, the sensation would spread. People would learn to imagine themselves inside the descent. Children would know the names of depth zones the way they know mountain ranges. News reports would not only speak of storms on the surface, but of robot fleets mapping dark plains, cameras waiting beside vents, and instruments listening for movement along the seafloor. The ocean would enter the human imagination from below. The first great task would be mapping. Before anyone can fully understand a place, they must know its shape. On land, shape is obvious because mountains rise into air and valleys lie open beneath the sky. In the ocean, the landscape is hidden by water, and water hides almost everything from ordinary sight. Modern science uses sound to measure the seafloor. Ships send sonar pulses downward and listen for the echo returning from below. The time it takes for sound to travel down and back reveals depth.
Over many passes, these measurements become maps, and blurred emptiness becomes terrain. This is a strangely patient form of discovery. There is no dramatic flag placed on a summit, no sudden view from a ridge. Instead, the map appears line by line. A vessel moves across the ocean, and behind it, a strip of the unknown becomes known. Autonomous vehicles can fill in details. Satellites can infer broad shapes from the way gravity and seafloor features affect the sea surface. But high-resolution knowledge takes time, effort, and money. The ocean is enormous, and every clearer image of it is earned slowly. As the global mission expands, the oceans begin to fill with quiet machines. Research vessels move across remote waters in long, deliberate routes. Autonomous surface craft travel without crews, powered by sun, wind, or fuel, carrying sonar arrays through weather that would exhaust human teams. Underwater gliders rise and sink through the water column, collecting temperature, salinity, oxygen, and current data. Remotely operated vehicles descend on cables from ships, their lights moving across the bottom like small moons. Free-swimming autonomous drones follow pre-planned paths in darkness, returning later with memory full of images and measurements. The work would not feel like conquest. It would feel like listening. Human civilization is loud on land, but in the deep ocean, it must become careful. Sound travels far underwater. Machines must survive pressure, corrosion, cold, and isolation. Batteries must last. Seals must hold. Navigation must work where GPS cannot reach, because satellite signals do not penetrate deep water. Communication is slow and limited. Even the simplest instruction can become difficult when
A robot is thousands of meters below the surface, separated from its operators by darkness and moving water. And yet, the map would grow. At first, the public might notice only the spectacular discoveries: a previously unmapped seamount rising from the abyss, a canyon cutting into the continental slope, a field of hydrothermal vents, a strange coral garden far below sunlight. But over time, the deeper effect would be quieter. The blank blue spaces in atlases would begin to gain texture. People would see that the Pacific is not only wide, but mountainous. The Atlantic is not only a passage, but a basin split by a great ridge. The Indian Ocean holds plateaus, fractures, and deep trenches. The Southern Ocean wraps the planet with cold power, linking currents and climates. For the humans watching, the psychological change would be profound. A blank space allows imagination, but a mapped space creates relationship. When a place has contours, names, and images, it becomes harder to ignore. The deep ocean would no longer be an abstract depth beneath ships. It would become a geography that could be visited by mind, if not by body. People would begin to speak of undersea mountains with the same ease as islands, of abyssal plains with the same calm familiarity as deserts, of trenches with the same awe once reserved for the highest peaks. As the submersible passes deeper, the color of the water changes. Red fades first, then orange and yellow weaken. Blue remains longest, but even blue begins to dim. The ocean is filtering sunlight, absorbing it, scattering it, thinning it into shadow. This is not a sudden darkness. It is a gradual forgetting of the sun. The water outside the glass becomes deeper, colder, less transparent. Shapes are harder to read. A fish passes through the light and vanishes at the edge of the beam. Its disappearance feels complete, as if it has crossed into another existence. Here, in the twilight zone, the ocean becomes both crowded and hidden.
Scientists call this middle depth the mesopelagic zone, a vast region below the sunlit surface and above the permanent darkness. It contains enormous numbers of organisms, many small, many delicate, many adapted to dim light and vertical movement. Some rise toward the surface at night to feed and sink again before dawn. This daily migration, repeated by countless creatures, is one of the largest movements of animal life on Earth. Yet, for most of human history, it happened unseen, beneath waves that looked empty from above. To explore the entire ocean would mean watching this migration not as a mystery hinted at by nets and acoustic signals, but as a living pattern across the planet. Cameras, sensors, and long-term observatories would show layers of organisms moving like a slow internal tide. People would learn that darkness is not absence. The deep scattering layers once detected by sonar would become part of public understanding, no longer mistaken for the sea floor, but recognized as life itself filling the midwater. The ocean would seem less like a container and more like an immense, breathing body. For humans, this discovery would be strangely intimate. We often imagine the unknown as distant, but the twilight zone lies beneath ordinary routes of travel, beneath ferries, cargo ships, cruise liners, fishing boats, and naval vessels. Billions of small lives rise and fall each day. The modern world passes over them without noticing. If the entire ocean were explored, that ignorance would become difficult to maintain. A person looking at the calm sea at dusk might imagine not emptiness, but a rising world below, answering the fading light with movement. The submersible sinks past the reach of comfortable color. Its lights matter more now. The beams cut through water filled with particles, fragments of life and decay drifting downward from the surface. This slow fall of organic matter is sometimes called marine snow. It is not snow in the ordinary sense, but it has the same silent quality. Tiny pieces sink through darkness, carrying energy from the sunlit world into the deep. Much of deep-sea life depends on this fall, directly or indirectly. What begins as sunlight, plankton, feeding, and death near the surface becomes nourishment for animals far below. This connection would be one of the great lessons of full ocean exploration. The deep is not separate from the surface. It is linked by chemistry, currents, sinking matter, and time. A storm above can change what falls
Below, a bloom of plankton can become food for organisms in darkness. Carbon can move through the ocean in forms that affect the planet's climate. The deep sea may feel alien, but it is part of the same Earth system that shapes weather, food webs, and the air human beings breathe. This is where the fear becomes more complex. At first, the ocean frightens because it is dark and deep. Then it frightens because it is connected. The invisible systems beneath the surface are not decorative. They matter. If humanity explored the whole ocean, it would gain knowledge, but also lose innocence. Every image of a deep coral damaged by a trawl, every record of warming water, every observation of oxygen change, every sign of pollution far from land would tell the same quiet truth. Nothing is truly away. What humans do at the surface can travel downward into the places we once imagined untouched. The descent continues. The temperature drops. The pressure grows, though the crew feels it only through numbers on displays and the careful strength of the vessel around them. Outside, the water no longer resembles the sea of beaches and harbors. It is black, with life appearing only when light touches it. Some animals make their own light.
Bioluminescence glows in brief points, lines, pulses, and clouds. It may be used to attract prey, confuse predators, find mates, or hide a silhouette against the faint light above. In the dark ocean, light becomes language. For a viewer at home, this world would be hypnotic, not loud, not fast, but alive with signals. Full exploration would bring back hours of footage in which very little seems to happen until one learns how to watch. A faint flash means presence. A drifting shape means an animal more fragile than glass. A small mouth, a transparent body, a ribbon of light, a sudden movement at the edge of the frame. Each becomes part of an alphabet humans are only beginning to read. The deep sea teaches patience because it cannot be understood by rushing. The machines must also become patient. A deep ocean mission cannot behave like exploration on land. There are no roads, no open-air camps, no easy repairs. Every dive is planned around limits: battery life, oxygen reserves, pressure ratings, communication delays, currents, weather above, the condition of cables, the endurance of crews. A small failure can become serious, not because the ocean is malicious, but because it is indifferent. The sea does not need to attack. It only needs to remain heavy, cold, and deep. This indifference would shape the human experience of complete exploration. On land, humans often imagine themselves as dominant because our tools are powerful. In the deep ocean, even advanced technology feels fragile. A submersible is a promise made against pressure. A robot is a small arrangement of metal, glass, seals, wires, and software trying to operate where sunlight never comes. Every successful mission would carry a quiet tension. Every returned vehicle would feel like a messenger from a place that does not care whether messages arrive. Eventually, the submersible reaches the continental slope, where the sea floor begins its long descent from the edge of the continent toward the abyssal plain. If the surface ocean is the ceiling and the shallows are the doorway, then the slope is the long road downward. Sediments slide and settle here. Canyons cut into the seabed, some shaped by ancient rivers, currents, and underwater flows. Submarine landslides can move vast amounts of material. The slope is not simply a ramp. It is a changing frontier between the world of continents and the deep basins beyond. Mapping these slopes in detail would have immediate consequences for humans. Many people live near continental margins without thinking of the submerged land beyond the coast. Yet these underwater slopes can matter for hazards, ecosystems, cables, fisheries, and resource decisions. Detailed exploration could improve understanding of underwater landslides and tsunami risks in certain regions. It could reveal habitats that need protection. It could show where human infrastructure is vulnerable. A coastline would no longer be seen as the place where land ends, but as the visible edge of a much larger system extending into darkness. The submersible's lights pass over sediment. At first, it seems plain, almost empty. Then details emerge. Tracks, burrows, small animals, ripple marks, a slow-moving sea cucumber, a brittle star extending thin.
Arms. Life on the deep sea floor is often sparse compared with a coral reef, but it is not absent. It is adapted to scarcity. Energy arrives slowly. Growth can be slow. Disturbance can last. The quietness of the landscape is part of its nature. For humans used to speed, this is difficult to feel. Modern life is built around acceleration. Messages instantly sent, goods shipped across oceans, news refreshed by the second, images consumed and forgotten.
The deep ocean exists on other tempos. Sediments accumulate over long periods. Some deep-sea organisms grow slowly. Seafloor features record ancient geological movements. To explore this place fully would force human attention into a slower rhythm. It would be hard to look at the abyss and believe that everything important happens quickly. As vehicles spread across the seabed, one of the most surprising discoveries for the public would be the scale of underwater mountains. Seamounts rise from the ocean floor, often volcanic in origin, sometimes forming chains that record the movement of plates over hotspots. Many do not reach the surface, so they remain invisible to sailors except through instruments. Yet they can affect currents, concentrate life, and create habitats unlike the surrounding plains. A hidden mountain in the sea may be an island that never touches air. In a fully explored ocean, these seamounts would become famous. Some would be known for coral forests, others for unusual species, geological history, or their role in steering water. They might become protected landmarks, studied by schools, and displayed in virtual reality. People would tour them without leaving land, moving through digital reconstructions built from sonar and camera footage. A child might recognize a deep Pacific seamount the way another recognizes a volcano in Hawaii or a peak in the Alps. The geography of wonder would expand downward. But wonder would be accompanied by tension. Once a place is mapped, it becomes easier to reach. Once it is easier to reach, it becomes easier to exploit. Fishing, mining, cable laying, military planning, conservation, and science all depend on knowledge. The same maps that help protect a habitat can also attract interest from those who want to use it. Complete ocean exploration would therefore bring a moral pressure as real as the physical pressure outside a submersible. Humanity would be asked again and again whether knowing a place gives us the right to change it. The dive moves onward toward deeper planes. The abyssal plain is one of the largest environments on Earth, yet it is also one of the least familiar to ordinary imagination. It can stretch for enormous distances, a dark, cold, sediment-covered landscape lying between continental margins and mid-ocean ridges. It is not dramatic in the way a trench is dramatic or a reef is colorful. Its power is in its size. It is the kind of place that changes how a person thinks about emptiness. In the beam of the submersible, the plane seems almost still. The vehicle moves slowly, and the lights reveal only a small circle of bottom at a time. Beyond that circle, darkness resumes. If a human being could stand there, which the body could not, the horizon would not look like a horizon. There would be no sky, no distance fading into blue air, only black water, pressure, and the sense of being on the floor of the world. It is easy to understand why the deep sea has so often been imagined as alien. It behaves, visually and emotionally, like another planet, yet scientifically, it is deeply earthly. The sediments contain shells, dust, chemical traces, and records of environmental change. The seafloor is shaped by plate tectonics, volcanic activity, currents, biological processes, and the long settling of material from above. To explore it completely would be to read an archive. The abyss does not speak quickly, but it keeps records. In its layers and forms, it holds evidence of Earth's climate, ocean chemistry, biological productivity, and geological movement. For humanity, this archive would matter because it would deepen memory. A species that often thinks in years and decades would be given better access to histories measured in thousands, millions, and tens of millions of years. The deep ocean would become not only a place of strange animals, but a library of planetary change. It would remind humans that Earth has never been still, that climates shift, continents move, sea levels rise and fall, and life adapts.
When it can, this knowledge would be beautiful, but also unsettling, because it would place modern civilization inside a much longer story. Somewhere ahead, the landscape changes. The flat sediment begins to break. Low ridges rise. Rocks appear. The water chemistry shifts. Sensors notice heat. Then, the lights find something that looks impossible the first time any person sees it. Dark chimneys rising from the sea floor, spilling mineral-rich fluid into cold water. Hydrothermal vents are among the most remarkable environments on Earth. They occur where seawater circulates through hot crust, reacts with rock, and returns carrying dissolved minerals. Around them, life can gather in abundance without relying directly on sunlight, using chemical energy through microbial processes at the base of the food web. The discovery of such ecosystems in the real world changed scientific understanding because it showed that rich communities could exist in the deep ocean independent of photosynthesis as the direct source of energy. In a complete exploration, many more vent systems would be studied in detail, each with its own chemistry, geology, and biological community. Some would be active and roaring with heat and minerals. Others would be fading. Some might host species known from other vents. Others might reveal life forms not yet described. For the human imagination, vents carry a special power. They look like openings into Earth's interior, places where the planet itself seems to breathe. Black fluid rises into freezing darkness. White animals cluster around heat. Microbes transform chemicals into life. Here, the ocean is not merely water over rock. It is contact between the inner Earth and the living Earth. A person watching from the submersible might feel that they are seeing one of the oldest conversations on the planet. Water, stone, heat, chemistry, and life meeting in darkness. Full exploration would make this conversation global. Scientists would compare vent fields across ocean basins, study how species disperse between isolated habitats, and examine how geology shapes biology. They would ask how resilient these systems are, how quickly they change, and how human activity might affect them. The public would learn that some of the most extraordinary life on Earth lives not in sunlight, but around wounds of heat in the sea floor. The descent through knowledge would also change the meaning of loneliness. The deep ocean feels lonely to humans because it lacks the signals we evolved to trust. No firelight, no horizon, no trees, no footsteps, no voices beyond the radio. But it is not lonely in itself. It is inhabited according to its own rules. The loneliness belongs to us. It is the feeling of a land animal entering a world where its instincts no longer help. To explore the entire ocean would reveal as much about human psychology as about marine science. This becomes clearest when communication falters. Imagine a submersible several thousand meters down, not in disaster, but in an ordinary technical pause. A signal weakens. A message is delayed. On the support ship, operators wait a little longer than expected. The room is calm because professionals are trained to remain calm, but every person understands the meaning of silence underwater. The crew inside the submersible may be safe, checking systems, continuing the dive, unaware of the tension above. Still, for those minutes, the ancient fear arrives. Members of the tribe are out of reach. This fear would become part of the public story of ocean exploration.
Space travel has taught humans to imagine astronauts beyond Earth, sealed in fragile capsules. Deep ocean exploration would teach a similar feeling in the opposite direction. Instead of looking up at a rocket, families would watch a tracking screen showing a vehicle under the sea. Instead of distance measured in kilometers above the planet, the danger would be depth below the surface. The emotional geometry is different, but the vulnerability is familiar. Human beings survive by staying connected, and the deep ocean is a place where connection must be engineered. As the mission expands across years, not one vessel, but many would carry this vulnerability. Some would be crude, most would be robotic. The ocean is too vast and too dangerous for human bodies to be the main instrument. Robots can wait longer, dive more often, enter narrower spaces, and accept risks that would be unacceptable for people. They do not feel
fear, but they extend fearful human curiosity. Through them, humanity would place eyes in the dark while keeping bodies near air. The relationship between humans and these machines would become strangely emotional. A remotely operated vehicle might be treated almost like a colleague by the team that pilots it. Its cameras become their eyes, its arms become their hands, its failures feel personal. When it returns from a dive covered in mud or mineral stains, carrying samples or footage, it has crossed a boundary no human could cross safely. In a complete exploration of the ocean, robots would become the quiet animals of human knowledge, patient, replaceable, and yet deeply valued. Beyond the vents, the route leads toward the great trenches. Trenches are formed at convergent plate boundaries, where one tectonic plate bends and sinks beneath another in a process called subduction. They are not simply holes. They are long, immense scars in Earth's crust, shaped by the slow movement of plates. Some include the deepest known parts of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, and within it the Challenger Deep, has become a symbol of downward extreme, a place often compared with Everest because it helps the mind grasp scale. If Everest were placed into the deepest part of the ocean, its summit would still lie beneath the surface. As the submersible approaches such depths in our imagined global mission, the mood changes. The ocean above is now not just deep, but almost unimaginable. Pressure is no longer a number that can be easily felt by the mind. It is thousands of tons pressing on the vehicle, resisted by engineering, materials, design, and trust. The lights illuminate steep walls, slopes, and sedimented surfaces shaped by geology and gravity. There is no possibility of casual exploration here. Every movement is deliberate. Every system matters. For humans, trenches would become the inverted mountains of a fully known ocean. Mountaineers climb upward into thin air, cold, and exposure. Deep ocean explorers descend into pressure, darkness, and enclosure. Both journeys push the body toward environments where it cannot naturally survive. Both create awe because they reveal the limits of human form. But the trench adds a special feeling. A mountain is visible before it is climbed. A trench must be believed before it is seen. It exists beneath a surface that gives almost nothing away. The exploration of trenches would also reveal that even the deepest places are not beyond life or human influence. Life has been observed in hadal environments, adapted to extreme pressure and isolation. At the same time, studies have found evidence that human pollutants can reach very deep ocean environments. The lesson is not that the deepest sea is crowded like a reef or ruined like an industrial site, but that depth
does not mean separation. The planet is connected in ways that are difficult to see and impossible to escape. This realization would settle heavily on human culture. For centuries, people imagined the deep as pure distance. If something sank far enough, it was gone. If waste vanished below the waves, it was out of sight. If a place had no witnesses, it seemed untouched. A fully explored ocean would make such thinking harder. Cameras would show objects on the sea floor. Sensors would detect chemical traces. Maps would reveal pathways. The deep would remain remote, but not disconnected. The old comfort of disappearance would weaken. Inside the submersible, there is little drama, only concentration. The crew speaks softly. The pilot watches instruments. The scientist watches the viewport. The vehicle descends, adjusts buoyancy, stabilizes, moves forward. Outside, the trench floor appears in the lights. It is quiet, sedimented, and immense. Perhaps a small animal crosses the beam. Perhaps the sediment lifts in a pale cloud from the vehicle's movement. There is no monster waiting, no ancient city required. The reality is stronger. Human beings have brought a pocket of air and light to the bottom of the sea, and the sea remains itself. This may be the deepest emotional truth of ocean exploration. The goal is not to make the ocean human. It is to let humans finally encounter it without demanding that it become familiar. The deep sea does not need to resemble our stories. It does not need to reward us with treasure. Its value is not measured only in usefulness. It is a part of Earth that has existed alongside us, beneath us, before us, and
mostly without us. To explore it fully would be to accept a kind of humility that modern civilization often resists. As the global mission continues, data would flow upward in quantities no single mind could hold. Depth readings, current measurements, species observations, sediment cores, chemical analyses, sound recordings, temperature profiles, images of vents, ridges, plains, slopes, canyons, trenches, and living communities. Artificial intelligence might help sort patterns, but human interpretation would remain essential. Scientists would argue, compare, revise, and refine. Some discoveries would be clear, others would be uncertain for years. Exploration does not remove mystery all at once. It changes the shape of mystery. The public would experience this through fragments, a new map released online, a live stream from a deep reef, a headline about an unknown species, a classroom lesson showing the route of a robot across the abyss, a documentary image of a submersible beside a wall of rock in total darkness. Slowly, these fragments would build a new mental image of Earth. The planet would no longer be land surrounded by water. It would be ocean with land rising through it. Human civilization would seem like a thin, bright layer at the edge of something far larger. This shift would affect even ordinary moments. Someone standing on a pier at night might look down at black water between wooden posts and imagine the vertical distance continuing beyond sight. Someone flying over the Pacific might no longer see only clouds and blue, but hidden mountains, fracture zones, trenches, and plains below. A person eating fish might think of migrations and food webs. A person sending a message overseas might remember cables on the seafloor. The explored ocean would enter daily thought quietly, not always as fear, but as depth. And yet, after all this mapping, diving, filming, and measuring, the ocean would still resist completion. To explore the entire ocean
does not mean every moment is known, every animal counted, every process solved. The sea moves, species migrate, vents appear and fade, storms stir the surface, currents shift, sediments slide, ice melts, heat moves, life reproduces, dies, and changes. A complete exploration would give humanity a foundation, not an ending. It would be the beginning of a relationship mature enough to admit how much remains in motion. The submersible now begins to leave the deepest floor. Its ballast changes. The ascent is slow. The lights still face outward, but the feeling inside the cabin has altered. Descent carries anticipation, fear, and the pull of the unknown. Ascent carries reflection. The crew has seen only one thin path through an immense world, yet that path is enough to change the meaning of the surface. Above them, waves continue moving under the sky. Ships continue crossing. Cities continue glowing along coasts. People continue living as if the solid ground is the main stage of Earth. But below, the mapped lines are multiplying. The machines are still moving. Other dives are beginning in other oceans. New ridges are appearing on screens. New habitats are being named carefully. New questions are rising faster than answers. The first phase of exploration, the great descent into the unknown, has not solved the ocean. It has revealed the size of the conversation. Humanity has lowered its lights into the dark and discovered that the dark is not empty, not silent, and not separate from the fate of the world above. As the vehicle rises toward faint blue again, the next change begins not in the water, but on land. The discoveries do not remain inside research ships and laboratories. They travel into governments, markets, fishing towns, classrooms, military offices, climate models, shipping companies, and homes far from any coast. Once the deep ocean has been seen, measured, and placed on the map, it begins to alter the human world that thought it was only looking down. The first maps arrive before dawn, not as folded paper charts, but as pale landscapes glowing on screens. Coastlines remain familiar, thin, and bright, yet beyond them, the blue emptiness has changed. The ocean floor rises into color, with ridges, plains, shelves, canyons, scars, and mountains hidden under moving water. Scientists lean closer in quiet rooms. Ministers request briefings. Fishing crews watch from harbor cafes. Children see, perhaps for the first time, that beneath the waves there is not a blank, but a
buried geography larger than all the countries they have ever named on land at school before today. At first, the revelation feels almost gentle. Humans like shape, because shape makes mystery bearable. A dark basin becomes a named plain. A submerged volcano becomes a landmark. A trench becomes a measurable depth, not just an endless thought falling away beneath ships. Yet the maps do not make the ocean smaller. They make it present. They turn deep water from distance into place, and once a place enters human speech, it begins to enter human duty. People can point to it, argue about it, protect it, fear it, and dream of it with new precision in the morning light. Governments would understand the change quickly. Every nation with a coast would look again at the water beside it. Some would see responsibility, some would see danger, some would see wealth, some would see borders becoming stranger than lines drawn from shore, fishing grounds, cable routes, military passages, protected zones, shipping lanes, continental shelves,
and open sea would enter one conversation. A clearer ocean would not create a quieter world. Knowledge gives precision, and precision often brings arguments into the open, where old assumptions can no longer hide behind blue space on maps and diplomatic language at sea any more quietly. For ordinary people, the transformation would arrive more softly, through lessons, forecasts, documentaries, museums, and bedtime thoughts. A teacher might show a class a volcanic ridge running for thousands of kilometers beneath waves. A child who once colored the ocean as a flat blue band might begin drawing mountains underwater. A parent standing on a beach might look at the horizon and imagine not emptiness, but layers descending into cold darkness. The sea would stop being only scenery. It would become a vertical world touching weather, food, trade, memory, fear, science, and every coastline that humans call home on Earth. The first great impact would be emotional. Humanity would have to accept that its home planet had never been fully familiar. This is difficult for a technological species surrounded by satellites, navigation systems, cameras, and instant information. We can watch storms forming over oceans, track ships across basins, and photograph Earth from space. Yet the deep sea exposes the limits of confidence. It reminds us that seeing a surface is not the same as understanding a world. A planet can shine brightly from orbit while remaining partly hidden from itself below the waves in darkness and pressure and time still. Ocean science would move closer to the center of public attention. For many people, the sea has meant beaches, storms, seafood, whales, coral, and horizons. Full exploration would add new words to that inner dictionary. Abyssal plains, hadal trenches, chemosynthesis, seamount ecosystems, submarine canyons, methane seeps, cold water corals, and deep scattering layers. These terms would not remain locked inside laboratories. They would appear in classrooms, news reports, and quiet conversations between people who suddenly realize that the ocean is not an edge, but an interior of the living planet beneath every voyage humans make across water, at night, too. Language shapes care. A place without words is easy to ignore. Once people learn the names of habitats, processes, animals, and risks, the ocean becomes detailed. It becomes vulnerable. It becomes near, even when it lies thousands of meters down. A coral garden seen through a robot camera may be beyond human touch, but once watched, it enters memory. A pale animal drifting through black water becomes not a monster, but a neighbor in a wider Earth. From that moment, indifference becomes harder to defend before children asking what we did after we finally saw it clearly down there, alive. The second impact would be scientific acceleration. A fully explored ocean would not mean every question solved, but it would give researchers a shared framework. Biology, geology, chemistry, physics, climate science, and engineering would connect more deeply. Scientists could compare habitats across entire basins rather than relying on scattered glimpses. They could ask where communities occur, how isolated they are, how currents connect them, and how disturbance moves through them. New species would be described, but the greater change would be pattern. Pattern is where wonder begins turning into understanding without losing its quiet power. For
minds drifting towards sleep. Pattern also allows prediction. When researchers understand seafloor shape, water movement, habitat chemistry, and the distribution of life, they can better estimate how systems may respond to change.
This would matter for fisheries, conservation, climate models, hazard warnings, shipping, and long-term planning. The ocean would remain complex, but ignorance would become less random. Instead of being surprised because nobody had looked, humanity would be challenged by what evidence shows. That kind of knowledge is calmer than panic, but heavier than curiosity, because it asks people to act while uncertainty still remains around the edges of every map and model. In fishing towns, the change would arrive before sunrise. Boats would still leave harbors under gulls and gray light. Nets would still be repaired by hands that know rope better than theory. Families would still depend on the sea for income, identity, food, and memory. But better ocean knowledge could change where fishing is allowed, when it pauses, and which habitats must remain untouched. To some crews, exploration might feel like surveillance, a distant scientific eye telling old communities that rules around familiar waters are shifting beneath them with charts they did not draw themselves or choose at all today. That tension would be real. The ocean is not only a scientific system, it is livelihood, inheritance, pride, and survival. A complete exploration would have to face this carefully. Better data might show that spawning grounds, deep reefs, migration routes, or nursery areas need protection. It might reveal that some stocks are under greater pressure than people hoped. It might also help fishing become more sustainable by showing where damage is greatest and where recovery is possible. The map would be useful only if human fairness traveled with it back into ports and coastal kitchens at dawn each working season. The emotional difficulty lies in timing. Ecological systems often need patience, but families need income now. A protected area may make scientific sense, yet still feel like a door closing to someone whose boat payments are due. If humanity explored the entire ocean, one test would be whether knowledge could become just. The map would show where life is fragile. The harder question would be how to protect that life without abandoning people whose stories and labor have always risen with the tide and returned with salt on their skin, every evening in winter storms too, and summer calm alike. In inland cities, the food question would arrive differently. People would begin to understand that seafood does not come from an endless blue storehouse. It comes from living systems with limits, migrations, nursery grounds, predators, and pressures that are often invisible at the market. Labels might become more detailed. Supply chains might become easier to trace. Aquaculture would be debated with more care, praised when it reduces pressure on wild stocks, criticized when it brings pollution or disease risk. A meal would carry maps with it, quietly linking dinner plates to currents, vessels, habitats, regulations, and choices made offshore earlier. The explored ocean would also deepen climate knowledge. The sea is not scenery beside continents. It absorbs heat, exchanges gases with air, stores carbon in different forms, and moves energy around Earth through currents. It influences storms, rainfall, sea ice, drought, and temperature patterns. Humans experience climate as weather above their heads, but much of the planet's thermal memory is held in water. To know the ocean better is to read that memory more clearly, and to feel how deeply our future is stored beneath waves moving slowly around the globe every hour, without rest or applause from anyone watching. As measurements improved from surface to sea floor, climate models would gain detail, not perfection, because Earth remains complex, but better understanding. The distribution of heat in the water column, the mixing of layers, the strength of currents, the condition of polar seas, and changes in oxygen, acidity, and salinity would become clearer. Long-term observatories could watch slow shifts. Deep instruments could record signals satellites cannot see. Scientists could better follow how surface changes reach the deep and how deep processes answer back through time in ways that shape storms and seasons above sleeping cities, later on Earth again someday.
For coastal cities, this would not feel abstract. A city by the water lives with borrowed confidence. Its towers, roads, tunnels, ports, homes, railways, and drains assume the sea will remain within expected limits. Rising seas, stronger flooding in some places, erosion, and storm surge challenge that assumption. A fully explored ocean would sharpen warnings. Planners would know more. Engineers would design with better evidence. Insurers would adjust risk. Governments would face harder choices about defenses, retreat, rebuilding, and who receives protection first. The ocean would enter budgets as surely as it enters streets during a high and dangerous tide. The primal fear here is simple: water entering the home. It does not require scientific training to understand. A person can ignore a graph, but not a tide in the street. When the ocean is better explored, coastal people may feel both safer and more exposed. Safer because knowledge can improve preparation. More exposed because uncertainty once gave emotional shelter. Not knowing exactly how vulnerable a place is can sometimes feel easier than seeing the risk drawn clearly on a public map. But maps have a way of returning at night to the mind after the room grows quiet enough. This is one of exploration's uneasy gifts. It gives power and removes excuses. Once a coastline has been studied, once storm surge patterns are modeled, once seafloor shape and coastal vulnerability are better understood, decisions become heavier. To build in a risky place becomes a choice. To ignore warnings becomes a choice. To protect wealthy districts while neglecting poorer ones becomes a choice. The mapped ocean would become a moral force, not because water judges us, but because knowledge leaves less darkness in which failure can pretend to be surprise when the next storm arrives from offshore at night again. Beneath coastal questions lies the restless sea floor. The ocean bottom is not a dead foundation. It moves with plate tectonics, opens at ridges, sinks at trenches, shakes during earthquakes, and sometimes releases energy into the water above. Underwater landslides, volcanic activity, and earthquakes can create hazards, including tsunamis under certain conditions. Full exploration would not allow humans to prevent these forces, but it could help identify vulnerable regions with greater care. The deep map would become part of survival, not merely wonder displayed on bright screens for curious eyes in schools or laboratories far inland from surf and salt air. Imagine sensors resting across key parts of the seafloor. Some measure pressure changes, some listen for seismic signals, some track temperature or chemistry near volcanic systems. Some sit quietly for years, gathering information where no human body could remain. Together, they would create a nervous system for the ocean floor, incomplete but sensitive. For communities near active margins, this could matter deeply. Warning depends on detection, communication, education, and trust. Better maps could improve models of how tsunami waves travel. Better instruments could reduce uncertainty, but people must know what warnings mean
and believe them quickly enough to move inland. In some places, the result might be a quiet culture of preparedness, signs on coastal roads, drills in schools, local stories teaching children to climb after long shaking or sudden sea withdrawal, museums showing not only past disasters, but the underwater shapes that help explain them. The explored ocean would give fear a form, and fear with form can become wisdom. It is the formless danger that haunts most deeply, the danger with no outline, no name, no route away from it when sirens begin calling through dark streets near the sea before dawn in the rain, somewhere vulnerable again. Shipping would change as well. Most goods that shape modern life cross oceans at some point. Clothes, food, fuel, electronics, vehicles, medicine, machinery, and raw materials. From the consumer's view, these journeys vanish into price and habit, but a fully explored ocean would reveal the physical world beneath this circulation. Better bathymetry and ocean data could improve routing, safety, infrastructure, and environmental planning. It could identify hazards for anchoring, cables, and seabed work. Yet it might also invite expansion into fragile regions, as changing conditions alter routes and markets beyond the old maps used by ships for generations at sea. Commerce would
not automatically become gentler because maps improve. Knowledge can reduce harm, but it can also make opportunity more visible. A safer route may save fuel and lives, while a newly accessible region may face noise, pollution, and disturbance. A port may use better data to plan responsibly or to grow faster than ecosystems can tolerate. Exploration would make consequences clearer, not choices simpler. This would become a repeated pattern in the human future with the ocean. Every new window opens both a path of care and a path of appetite toward the same dark and living place below. The ocean also carries the nervous system of the digital world. Undersea cables link continents with astonishing importance. Messages, financial trades, calls, videos, research data, and ordinary human conversations cross the sea floor through fiber optic lines. People speak of the cloud as if information floats above us, weightless and abstract. Yet much of it moves through physical cables lying in darkness across ridges, plains, shelves, and trenches. The modern mind is connected by ancient geology. A message sent before sleep may travel over abyssal sediment beneath animals no sender will ever see or imagine clearly tonight at all from home. With full exploration, these cables would become more widely understood. Their routes, vulnerabilities, and environments would matter not only to engineers and governments, but to public imagination. A video call between continents might be imagined passing through black landscapes where deep animals drift. A bank transfer might cross a mountain range that never reaches air. The digital world would feel less virtual, more geological. This awareness would bring security concerns too. Cables can be damaged by natural events, anchors, fishing, and perhaps deliberate interference. A better mapped ocean could protect them, but also reveal strategic weakness to watching powers below. Here, the mood darkens slightly, not into panic, but realism. Whenever humans map a place, power follows. Maps can guide care, but they can also guide extraction, control, and rivalry. The ocean is difficult to inhabit and governed by complex agreements, yet human desire remains familiar.
A fully explored ocean would be a scientific achievement, but also a geopolitical event. Navies would study new details of depth, acoustics, topography, temperature layers, routes, and choke points. The abyss would be wilderness to scientists, infrastructure to companies, and quiet strategy to states thinking in secrets beneath the moonlit surface of international waters everywhere. For ordinary citizens, this hidden military dimension would be hard to grasp. They might see occasional headlines about undersea drones, damaged cables, seabed sensors, or naval competition. Most activity would remain out of view. Yet the knowledge that the deep ocean is not only nature, but also strategy, would change its emotional meaning. The darkness would no longer be simply natural darkness. It would be a place where human rivalry moves quietly, where silence can mean peace or surveillance, and where distance does not always mean safety for nations connected by water and glass threads below the waves at night. Governance would become central. Who decides what happens in the deep? Who has access to data? Which regions are open to research, fishing, mining, or protection? How are benefits shared? How are harms measured? The ocean crosses borders more easily than laws do. Currents carry no passports. Migrating animals recognize no treaty line. Pollution, warming, noise, and acidification ignore national edges. Complete exploration would make these mismatches harder to excuse. It would show that the sea is divided by human agreements, but joined by physics, biology, chemistry, and motion older than any flag raised above it by any country today. One difficult debate would involve minerals on the deep sea floor. Some regions contain polymetallic nodules, cobalt-rich crusts, or seafloor massive sulfides, depending on geology. These materials can include metals useful to modern technologies. Supporters of deep-sea mining argue that such resources could help supply demand for batteries, electronics, and energy systems. Critics warn that deep-sea ecosystems are poorly understood, slow to recover, and vulnerable to disturbance. Both desire and concern come from real pressures. The explored ocean would make this argument visible, concrete, and emotionally harder
than words printed in reports alone could ever be for everyone. It is one thing to discuss nodules as resources in darkness. It is another to see animals living among them, sediment clouds rising from disturbance, and slow ecosystems whose recovery may not match human schedules. Images change arguments. Once the public has seen the abyssal floor, it becomes harder to call it empty. But once industries and governments see detailed maps, targets also become clearer. The conflict is almost painful in its simplicity. The world wants materials. The world needs restraint. The same map can invite protection and extraction, depending on which human hunger reaches it first in the dark. The pressure would not only come from mining. Scientists and companies would study organisms adapted to cold, pressure, darkness, and unusual chemistry. Deep-sea microbes, enzymes, and biological compounds may hold research or industrial interest. This could lead to useful discoveries, but also disputes over ownership and benefit sharing. If life from international waters supports profitable applications, who benefits? Researchers? Companies? Humanity? Countries with ships and laboratories? The question sounds legal, but beneath it is older. The instinct to name, claim, study, protect, profit,
and build meaning around whatever the unknown gives back to our reaching hands from below someday. Education would change in ways both practical and poetic. A generation growing during complete ocean exploration would inherit a different planet. Textbooks would include detailed seafloor maps as normal features, not rare diagrams. Students might learn ocean zones beside atmospheric layers, vents beside volcanoes, currents beside winds, and submarine landslides beside earthquakes. The ocean would not be a chapter at the end of science. It would run through the book. This could change ambition. Some children would dream not of rockets, but of robots descending through blue darkness toward a world their grandparents barely imagined beneath the waves at all. New work would gather around this relationship. Pilots of remotely operated vehicles, autonomous systems engineers, ocean data analysts, marine geneticists, deep-sea ecologists, seafloor mappers, environmental lawyers, international policy specialists, technicians who maintain sensors in corrosive saltwater, designers of low-impact sampling tools, educators who translate complex systems into stories people can feel, artists who turn unseen landscapes into images the public can understand. The ocean economy would become not only extraction and transport, but observation, interpretation, repair, restraint, and care. A port could become a doorway into science as much as commerce and departure in the years ahead, slowly. Coastal cities with research infrastructure might change character. Harbors, once known mainly for fishing, shipping, or tourism, could develop laboratories, robot maintenance halls, marine technology workshops, training centers, and public theaters where live feeds from deep vehicles appear on large screens. Visitors might sit in darkened rooms, watching a robot cross an abyssal plain in real time, the way people once gathered around telescopes or planetarium domes. The spectacle would be slow, and that slowness could become its beauty. A world that does not hurry can teach a tired species how to look longer without needing noise or drama anymore. There is comfort in watching a world that moves without hurry. The deep ocean is not edited for human attention. It drifts, pulses, waits, and reveals itself gradually. In a restless society, live ocean feeds might become quiet companions for people working late, studying, recovering, or trying to sleep. A camera beside a vent, a drifting jellyfish, a sea-floor station under marine snow. These images could soften the mind. They would remind viewers that life has rhythms beyond notification sounds, deadlines, traffic, and the bright glass of phones glowing beside beds in dark rooms across the waking world every night. And yet, the emotional effect would not be only peaceful. The more humans see, the more they may grieve. Exploration often brings wonder and sorrow together. A camera may reveal a beautiful coral community, then nearby damage from human activity. A sensor may record warming trends. A troll mark may cross habitat that took a long time to grow. Plastic debris may appear where people imagined purity. These images would not need dramatic
music. Their quietness might make them stronger. The deep does not shout its wounds. It simply shows them under light and lets us understand slowly in silence. This grief would be unusual. It would be grief for something newly known and already threatened. Forests and rivers can be familiar before they are endangered. The deep ocean would often enter public memory and public worry at the same time. Conservation would adapt. Campaigns would not rely only on whales, dolphins,
turtles, sharks, or coral reefs near sunlight. They would include deep corals, vent communities, seamount habitats, abyssal plains, and animals too strange to love easily until knowledge makes them visible as lives with their own place in Earth's long and patient story. Beneath us all tonight as well, human empathy would stretch. People are naturally moved by faces, eyes, familiar bodies, and animals that resemble us in expression or behavior. Much deep-sea life does not fit those patterns. It may be transparent, gelatinous, eyeless, spiny, slow, or shaped by pressure beyond imagination. To care about it requires imagination, supported by knowledge. The explored ocean would ask humans to widen concern beyond beauty and familiarity. This widening is quiet but important. A civilization grows not only by reaching farther, but by learning to value what does not resemble itself in the mirror of instinct or desire anymore. Alone, the ocean would enter art. Painters, filmmakers, musicians, game designers, and writers would use new maps and images. Abyssal landscapes might influence architecture, fashion, sound design, and visual culture. Museums could build immersive rooms where visitors walk through darkness among projections of marine snow and bioluminescent animals. Films might become more grounded in their depiction of the deep. Games might let players pilot slow vehicles through real bathymetry. The old sea monster would not vanish, but it would be joined by a richer imagination, calmer and stranger, because reality had finally given artists better dreams from below the waves themselves. Culture matters because art prepares feeling before policy follows. People protect what they can imagine. If the deep ocean becomes part of shared culture, decisions about it will no longer feel remote. A debate about mining a seamount may evoke an image in the public mind. A proposal to protect a trench may sound less abstract. A child who watched a live stream from that region may grow into an adult who recognizes its name. The ocean becomes politically real when it becomes emotionally real, and emotion often travels through stories before it enters laws or budgets or careful treaties later. There would also be resistance. Some people would be tired of being asked to care about one more distant system. Others would distrust scientific institutions or see ocean protections as economic threats. Some would argue that humans have more urgent problems on land. These objections would not vanish because maps are beautiful. A fully explored ocean would enter a crowded human world already full of inequality, conflict, distraction, and fatigue. That is why the story would be uneven. Wonder would spread, but so would suspicion, impatience, bargaining, fear, and the old habit of looking away when truth feels expensive enough. In some places, ocean exploration would inspire pride and cooperation. In others, it would trigger competition or anger. Wealthy nations and institutions might have better access to ships, robots, sensors, and data. Small island states, despite being deeply connected to the sea, might struggle for equal influence. Indigenous and local maritime knowledge would need respect, not token mention. Long before modern sonar, coastal peoples understood tides, reefs, currents, fish, storms, and seasonal change through lived experience. A mature ocean civilization would bring machines,
satellites, laboratories, and local memory together without letting one silence the other for convenience or power again. As data accumulates, maritime law would become more visible to the public. Many people rarely think about it, yet it shapes navigation, resources, rights, responsibilities, and conservation. Full exploration would pressure existing systems, marine protected areas in international waters, environmental impact assessments, data sharing, seabed rules, and liability for damage would become urgent. The ocean's hiddenness has often slowed accountability. Visibility would accelerate it. Once a habitat is mapped before disturbance, later damage can be compared with a baseline. The ocean becomes a witness when it is observed repeatedly and remembered through images, measurements, and records kept carefully over time. That witnessing would change industry. Some companies might adapt, using better maps and ecological knowledge to reduce harm. Others would resist restrictions. New certification systems could emerge, though their value would depend on enforcement. Investors and insurers might evaluate ocean risk differently. Ports might redesign operations. Shipping might adjust speeds or routes in sensitive areas when evidence supports it. Fishing gear might change. Some extraction plans might be delayed, limited, or stopped. Others might continue under monitoring. Knowledge alone rarely changes behavior. It must meet incentives, laws, pressure, culture, fear, hope, and communities willing to keep watching what happens next. There is also a quieter, personal transformation. Imagine someone far inland watching an interactive ocean map at night. They rotate the globe and remove the water layer. Mountain chains appear. Trenches curve like dark wounds. Seamounts rise in clusters. The continents look incomplete without their submerged margins. The person realizes the Earth they carried in their mind was simplified, almost beyond recognition. This realization is not practical at first. It is existential. The home planet becomes stranger and therefore more precious. A familiar world has opened underneath itself without moving an inch from where it always was, beneath us, waiting. Full exploration would give humanity this feeling repeatedly. The ordinary would become layered. Rain on a city would connect to rivers, rivers to estuaries, estuaries to coastal currents, currents to global circulation, circulation to heat, heat to weather, weather to crops, crops to dinner. A phone call would connect to cables, a storm warning to ocean heat, a seafood meal to food webs, a beach holiday to sediment movement and sea level. The ocean would no longer be elsewhere. It would be underneath many things people already do, quietly touching daily life like a hidden pulse beneath ordinary human hours. This could encourage humility, but also anxiety. The more connected the world appears, the harder it becomes to imagine simple solutions. If everything touches everything else, every decision seems heavier. Full ocean exploration might create a new environmental awareness, not only wonder, not only fear, but responsibility fatigue. People may ask how one life can carry the abyss, climate, fisheries, cables, storms, species, resources, and politics. The answer would not be for each person to carry everything. Societies build institutions because no individual can hold the whole world alone in their hands every morning without breaking under the weight, eventually. The value of exploration would be to help institutions choose better, while giving citizens enough understanding to demand care.
A viewer falling asleep to deep-sea images does not need to become an oceanographer, but they may wake with a changed sense of belonging. They may feel that Earth is not divided between the human world and nature, but woven tightly through water, air, stone, light, carbon, hunger, trade, and memory. To know the ocean is to know that human life has always been floating beside more than it noticed, even when the sea looked empty under summer sun before. Public rituals might form around ocean events, annual releases of new seafloor maps, deep-sea live stream nights, school partnerships with research vessels, memorials for explorers lost at sea, celebrations of newly protected areas, citizen science projects identifying animals in footage, quiet global moments when a vehicle reaches a record depth, not as a stunt, but as shared attention. The ocean could become a stage for cooperation, and cooperation is one of the gentler forms of human greatness. It asks people to look together at something too large for any one nation, company, or lifetime to own completely by itself alone. Still, cooperation would carry limits. The ocean is too large, deep, dynamic, and political to be held by one dream. There would be failures. Some habitats would be damaged before they are understood. Some data would be hidden for strategic or commercial reasons. Some communities would feel excluded. Some predictions would be wrong. Some technologies
would break. Some promises would be made too easily. A credible future must allow imperfection. The point is not that humans become wise overnight, but that the ocean forces them to confront the cost of ignorance again and again, more clearly than before, beneath waves. As maps become normal, mystery does not disappear, it migrates. At first, the mystery was simple. What is down there? Then, as cameras and sonar answer part of that question, deeper mysteries rise. How do ecosystems persist over long times? How connected are distant populations? How much disturbance can abyssal habitats tolerate? How will warming alter deep currents? How does life adapt to pressure at the molecular level? What histories are written in sediments not yet sampled? Exploration turns one large darkness into many precise questions, each smaller and sharper, but still filled with wonder for patient minds to follow. This is how science grows. It does not remove wonder, it refines it. A child may begin with the idea of monsters in the deep. Later, they learn about pressure, bioluminescence, vents, microbes, trenches, sediments, and currents. The monster fades, but awe remains, now attached to reality. Reality, when seen clearly, is often stranger and more durable than fantasy. The explored ocean would teach this lesson again and again, showing that truth does not have to shout to be immense enough to hold a human life in silence for hours, at the edge of sleep or waking thought tonight, gently. In laboratories and hospitals, ocean knowledge might contribute indirectly to human life in ways difficult to predict. Enzymes from organisms adapted to unusual conditions, compounds from marine life, and insights from pressure-tolerant biology may support research. It would be wrong to promise miracles, because science does not work that way. But it is reasonable to say that fuller understanding of ocean life could expand biology, chemistry, and medicine in unexpected directions. The deep ocean is not a pharmacy waiting for extraction. It is a living library, and libraries matter because they contain possibilities
not yet read by anyone alive. Even the sound of the ocean would change in human imagination. Hydrophones reveal underwater worlds filled with whale calls, fish sounds, ice movement, earthquakes, volcanic activity, rain, ships, and human noise. A fully explored ocean would include acoustic mapping on a vast scale. Scientists could study soundscapes as habitats. The public might hear the deep not as silence, but as a low, complex field of signals. This would change the poetry of the sea. Its silence was partly our deafness. To listen is to learn that we have also been making noise where other lives depend on hearing each other. By the time the explored ocean has changed science, politics, food, climate planning, security, culture, and daily imagination, the original descent seems almost small. A submersible entering darkness was only the beginning. The greater descent happens in the human mind as old assumptions sink away. The sea is not empty. The deep is not separate. Knowledge is not innocence. On the coasts, ports glow again. Research vessels prepare for night. Somewhere offshore, a robot follows a route above cold sediment. Somewhere inland, someone watches a blue screen showing a mountain that never breaks the surface. And now, harder questions rise. The harder questions do not rise quickly. They come like deep water itself, slowly filling the spaces that knowledge has opened. At first, humanity is busy with maps, policies, ships, instruments, and arguments. Then, as the images become familiar and the first shock fades, a quieter realization begins to settle. The ocean has not become ordinary because it has been explored. It has become more intimate and, in some ways, more unsettling. A place can be measured and still remain beyond us. A trench can have a depth, a coordinate, a name, and a detailed profile, and still feel like a thought, falling into darkness without end. This is where the human story changes from discovery into relationship. Early exploration is always filled with motion. Vessels depart, robots descend, researchers gather around screens. Every new landscape feels like an answer. But after years of work, when the great outline of the seafloor has been drawn and the major habitats have entered public memory, the question becomes less about what lies beneath the waves and more about how to live with knowing. The blank space
has faded. In its place is a living, geological, chemical, political, and emotional world. It cannot be unseen, and it cannot be returned to silence simply because humans find its demands uncomfortable. A fully explored ocean would make Earth feel both larger and smaller. Larger because the hidden world below the surface would expand the mind. Mountain chains would continue under the sea. Plains wider than countries would lie in darkness. Trenches would cut into the crust like long shadows. Life would appear in forms that do not need sunlight, familiar seasons, or the comforts humans associate with survival. But Earth would also feel smaller, because another mystery would have been folded into human knowledge. The planet would have fewer empty places in imagination. There would be fewer regions where a person could say, with complete honesty, that no one really knows what is there. That loss would carry a gentle sadness. Humans are drawn to exploration, but we are also nourished by the unknown. A blank map is frightening, yet it gives the mind room to wander. The deep ocean has held that role for centuries. It has been a place of storms, monsters, wrecks, lost ships, hidden creatures, and impossible depths.
Science does not destroy wonder, but it changes its shape. Once the ocean is mapped, the mystery does not vanish, it becomes more precise. Instead of asking whether a monster waits in darkness, we ask how life repairs itself after disturbance, how currents change as climate warms, how animals find one another across black distances, and how much silence a living system needs. The ancient fear of the ocean would survive the age of total exploration. A map does not make water breathable. A camera does not soften pressure. A sonar profile does not warm the abyss. Humans could know the seafloor in remarkable detail and still remain land animals with lungs, bones, nervous systems, and instincts built for air. This is why the ocean would never become fully domestic. It can be studied, visited, monitored, and represented, but it resists being possessed. Every dive would still involve risk. Every deep vehicle would still be a fragile argument against physics. Every human presence below a certain depth would still depend on technology behaving perfectly in a place where the body has no second chance. That resistance is healthy. It prevents exploration from becoming arrogance. The danger in knowing a place is that people may begin to believe knowledge equals control. The ocean refuses that simplification. Even if its floor is mapped, its currents shift, its chemistry changes, its animals migrate, adapt, disappear, and appear in patterns that require patience to understand. Its storms are born from interactions too large for simple certainty. Its trenches remain deep, whether people admire them or not. The explored ocean would become one of humanity's great teachers, not because it obeys us, but because it constantly reminds us that understanding is not the same as command. Out of this lesson could come a new kind of restraint. Some regions of the ocean would almost certainly be judged too fragile, too rare, or too important to disturb. Not all knowledge must lead to use. This idea sounds simple, but it is difficult for a species that often measures discovery by what can be extracted from it. A vent field can be scientifically precious without being economically useful. A deep coral community can matter even if no tourist will ever see it directly. A trench ecosystem can deserve protection even if it remains dark forever. Full exploration would create the possibility of informed restraint, and that may be one of its most mature outcomes. Sanctuaries in the deep ocean would feel different from protected areas on land. There would be no trails, no visitor centers beside the habitat, no easy photographs taken by travelers. Their protection would depend on trust in science, law, monitoring, and imagination. People would have to care for places they cannot walk through, touch, or smell. This is a demanding form of care. It asks humans to extend moral concern beyond direct experience. In a way, it would be like protecting a piece of night, not because it belongs to us, but because it belongs to the planet, and because its quietness is part of the whole. These sanctuaries would also teach patience. On land, damage and recovery can sometimes be seen within a human lifetime. A forest burns and new growth appears. A river is
cleaned and fish return. In the deep ocean, some processes are slower, and some disturbances may last far beyond ordinary planning cycles. The cold, low-energy conditions of many deep habitats can make recovery uncertain or prolonged. This does not mean the deep sea is motionless or helpless. It means human actions there must be judged against timescales that exceed quarterly profits, election cycles, and even the memory of a single generation.
The deep asks decisions to slow down. A world that has explored the entire ocean would therefore need a new imagination of time. Not only the quick time of weather, markets, and news, but the slow time of sediment, coral growth, crustal movement, species dispersal, and climate memory. On a coastline, a wave breaks and vanishes. Far below, layers settle, grain by grain. Above, a policy changes in a year. Below, the consequences of damage may linger through the lives of people not yet born. The ocean connects these scales. It shows how the immediate and the ancient share the same planet, and how human action, though brief, can leave marks in places that remember slowly. This deeper sense of time would reshape education and culture. Students would learn not only where the ocean is deepest, but how long it takes for certain habitats to form, how currents carry heat across decades, how carbon moves through living systems, and how geological forces open and close ocean basins across deep history. The sea would become a way of thinking about continuity. People might begin to feel that the modern world, for all its noise and urgency, is only a thin layer over older rhythms. Beneath the shipping lanes and satellites, Earth is still building mountains, sinking plates, forming sediments, and moving water through vast loops of energy. The explored ocean would also change the way humans imagine themselves in relation to space. For much of the modern age, the stars have represented the final frontier, the direction of wonder and escape. Rockets rise, telescopes look outward, other planets promise distance. Yet the ocean offers a different kind of infinity, one that is not above the atmosphere, but inside our own world. It is not reached by leaving Earth, but by admitting how little of Earth we truly inhabited. When humans explore the entire ocean, the old upward dream is not diminished. It is balanced by a downward reverence. We learn that alienness was never only elsewhere, it was here, under the waves, beneath the roots we crossed with cargo and confidence. This realization could soften the human ego. The ocean does not place humans at the center of its story. We are recent visitors to its depths. Life in the sea began long before human civilizations, and the ocean shaped Earth's habitability long before anyone gave names to continents. Even now, most of its volume is not arranged for us. Its pressures, darkness, and chemistry are indifferent to our comfort. To explore all of it is to see the planet without the flattering assumption that every landscape exists for human use. That can feel cold at first, but there is peace in it. A world that does not revolve around us can still hold us. The relationship between exploration and humility would become one of the great moral questions of the ocean age. History shows that discovery can lead to extraction, domination, and damage. It can also lead to protection, solidarity, and awe. The difference is not in the map itself, but in the culture that receives it. A seafloor map can be a target list or a care plan. A species record can be a commercial opportunity or a reason for restraint. A deep sea image can become entertainment for a moment or a memory that changes how a person votes, teaches, consumes, or dreams. Knowledge becomes ethical only when it changes behavior. The explored ocean would make inequality harder to ignore. Wealthy countries and institutions would likely possess more vehicles, laboratories, ships, and computing power. They would gather data faster and interpret it with greater influence. Yet many of the people most affected by ocean change live in coastal communities, island nations, and regions with fewer resources. Some depend directly on fisheries, reefs, mangroves, ports, or seasonal sea patterns. A complete ocean map that does not include them in decision-making would be incomplete in a human sense. It might be accurate in depth and contour, but poor in justice. This matters because the ocean is not only a physical
system, it is also a cultural home. For many communities, the sea carries stories, ancestors, work, food, danger, migration, worship, memory, and identity. Modern instruments can reveal things traditional knowledge could not measure, but lived knowledge can reveal meanings instruments do not capture. A mature future would not force these forms of knowing into competition. It would allow satellites, sonar, submersibles, and ancestral memory to stand together, each correcting the blind spots of the other. The entire ocean cannot truly be explored if only machines descend and communities are expected to remain silent on shore. In such a future, the word exploration might change meaning. It would no longer mean only arriving first, seeing first, naming first, or taking a sample. It would mean learning how to stay in relationship without destroying the subject of attention. It would mean observation over time, respect for uncertainty, and the ability to say no, even when technology says yes. This is a quieter heroism than the old image of conquest. It does not always create dramatic photographs. Sometimes it looks like a meeting where a protected area is expanded, a mining license is delayed, a fishing practice is redesigned, or a research team shares data openly with the people most affected by its use. The deep ocean trial would unfold not in one courtroom, but across decades. Every proposal to mine, protect, route, fish, drill, study, or restrict would be another hearing. The evidence would include maps, images, species surveys, climate models, economic needs, local histories, and ethical arguments. Humanity would stand before a world it had finally learned to see, and be asked what seeing is for. Is it for possession? Is it for care? Is it for survival? Is it for wonder? The answer would not be pure. Humans are rarely pure, but the conversation itself would mark a turning point. We would no longer be acting in darkness and calling it innocence. There is an almost mythic quality to this. In old stories, a hidden realm is revealed, and the people who find it are tested. They are offered treasure, power, knowledge, or forbidden beauty. What matters is not only what they find, but what they become after finding it. The deep ocean would be such a realm, except real, material, cold, and alive. Its treasures would not be gold in chests, but information, life, chemistry, perspective, and warning. Its test would not be whether humans can reach it. The test would be whether humans can reach it and remain gentle. As decades pass, the first generation raised with a fully explored ocean would differ from those before it. They would not remember when the sea floor was mostly blank in public imagination. To them, bathymetric maps might feel as ordinary as weather maps. They might grow up knowing that the mid-Atlantic ridge winds beneath the ocean, that trenches mark tectonic boundaries, that vents host chemical ecosystems, that cables carry the internet under the sea, and that the deep ocean is connected to climate and food. What seems revolutionary to one generation becomes background knowledge to the next. This is how the human world expands. Yet normality does not have to drain beauty. The night sky is familiar and still beautiful.
Mountains are mapped and still beautiful. The ocean floor could become known and still remain vast enough for awe. In fact, familiarity may deepen tenderness. A person can love a place more after learning its details. The names of features, animals, and processes become handles for affection. A once anonymous darkness becomes a community of places. The unknown is powerful, but the known can be beloved. The goal of exploration, at its best, is not to reduce mystery into data, but to turn distance into relationship. There would still be discoveries. Complete exploration in the broad sense would not stop new findings, because the ocean is dynamic, and because observing once is not the same as understanding forever. New species may be described from collected samples or images. New behaviors may be filmed. New vent fields may become active or be recognized. New changes may appear as climate shifts. Long-term observatories may catch events no expedition would have predicted. The ocean would continue to surprise, but the surprise would emerge from a foundation of attention rather than from neglect. It would be the surprise of a known companion, revealing another depth. The more humans watch the ocean, the more
they may learn to accept uncertainty without turning it into fear. This is a subtle but important change. Uncertainty can be frightening when it feels like emptiness. It becomes easier to live with when it is surrounded by careful knowledge. A scientist can say, "We do not yet know," and that sentence can be calm rather than helpless. A map can show what is measured and what is still being refined. A model can offer ranges rather than false certainty. The explored ocean would teach a kind of intellectual honesty, one that does not confuse humility with weakness. For sleep, this kind of thought is strangely comforting. The mind does not need every question answered in order to rest. It needs enough structure to feel held and enough mystery to drift. The ocean offers both. It has currents, zones, chemistry, and geology. It also has darkness, distance, and life moving beyond the light. A documentary journey through it can settle the mind because the scale is too large for ordinary worry. Personal concerns do not disappear, but they become smaller beside trenches, currents, seamounts, and the slow fall of marine snow through miles of water. As the human world absorbs the explored ocean, cities continue glowing along coastlines. Some build higher seawalls. Some restore wetlands and mangroves where those ecosystems belong. Some redesign harbors. Some create warning systems. Some argue for years before acting. Human response remains uneven because humanity itself is uneven. But even imperfect action is different when guided by clearer sight. The old ocean of ignorance allowed delay to disguise itself as uncertainty. The new ocean, mapped and monitored, would speak through evidence. Its voice would not be human, but the message would still arrive. These systems are connected, and choices travel farther than we imagine. The explored ocean would also reveal that protection is not separation from human life. Protecting deep ecosystems does not mean pretending humans are outside nature. It means recognizing that human activity is now powerful enough to affect places once shielded by distance. There is no pure outside left. Even the remote deep can receive traces of surface behavior. This can feel tragic, but it can also inspire responsibility. If human influence reaches far, then human care must learn to reach far as well. The same species that sends pollution into the deep
can send knowledge, law, restraint, and repair. Repair in the deep ocean is not always simple. Some damage cannot be quickly undone, and some interventions may cause more harm than help. In many cases, the wisest repair is prevention, avoiding disturbance before it begins, reducing pressures from above, limiting pollution, slowing climate change, and protecting habitats with a margin of caution. This is another lesson the ocean offers. Not every wound can be healed by heroic action afterward. Some wisdom lies in not making the wound. It is a difficult message for a culture that loves rescue stories, but the deep sea belongs to the slower ethics of care before crisis. The question of resources would remain. Human societies need materials, energy, food, and infrastructure. It would be too simple to say that the ocean should never be used, and too reckless to say that everything useful should be taken. The explored ocean would force a more adult conversation. What do we truly need? What alternatives exist? What harm is acceptable? And who gets to decide? Who benefits? And who bears the risk? What cannot be replaced once damaged? These questions are not as visually spectacular as a submersible light cutting through darkness, but they may be the true center of the story. In a sense, exploring the entire ocean would bring humanity to the edge of its own reflection. At the beginning, the gaze is directed outward, down to the trenches, across the plains, along the ridges, into the vents. Later, the gaze turns back. The ocean shows us our curiosity, our hunger, our fear of scarcity, our desire for control, our capacity for cooperation, and our ability to love what we may never touch. It reveals not only hidden animals and landscapes, but hidden motives. The last unmapped place is not only under the water, it is inside the human response to what the water reveals. This inward map may be the hardest to draw. There is no sonar for wisdom. No autonomous vehicle can descend into a civilization's conscience and return with a clean diagram. We learn ourselves through
Choices made under pressure. The ocean gives pressure in every sense: physical, political, economic, emotional, moral. It asks whether knowledge can deepen patience. It asks whether fear can become preparation instead of panic. It asks whether wonder can survive usefulness. It asks whether a species that has filled so much of the surface with noise can learn to protect silence beneath it. As the story approaches its quieter end, the ocean remains in motion. Currents turn in darkness. On the abyssal plains, fine particles settle. Around vents, chemical energy feeds communities adapted to heat and cold side by side. On seamounts, water flows around hidden slopes, shaping habitats in ways still being studied. In trenches, pressure rests with an almost unimaginable weight. Above, ships cross lanes of trade. Satellites look down at the surface. People sleep in coastal apartments, inland houses, mountain villages, desert towns, and cities far from salt water, unaware that the sea is still moving through the systems that support their lives. There is peace in remembering this. While the human mind narrows around its daily tasks, the planet continues its larger work. The ocean does not pause when no one watches. It mixes heat, carries life, erodes, deposits, dissolves, feeds, hides, reveals, and holds memory. Its rhythms are not designed for human comfort, yet they can comfort us because they are steady in a way human events are not.
A current does not hurry because a person is anxious. A trench does not become shallower because a market changes. Marine snow does not stop falling because a city is awake. If humanity explored the entire ocean, perhaps the greatest gift would not be certainty, but proportion. We would know more, and by knowing more, we would understand more clearly how small we are within the living machinery of Earth. Smallness can be frightening when it feels like helplessness, but it can be soothing when it frees us from the illusion of having to stand at the center of everything. The ocean allows the human self to become smaller without becoming meaningless. It reminds us that we are not the whole story, but we are part of it, briefly, beautifully, and with consequences. The surface, seen from below, is only a wavering brightness. From the deep, the world of humans is a thin, shining layer pressed against air. Almost everything we build exists close to that boundary. Ports, bridges, beaches, ships, cities, lights, and songs. We live near the top of a depth we rarely feel. The explored ocean would make that arrangement visible. It would show that civilization is not separate from the planet's hidden volume, but balanced along its edge. To live well on Earth may require remembering what lies beneath that edge, even when our feet are on pavement and our windows face streets. A complete ocean map would not end dreaming. It would give dreams new landscapes. Someone drifting toward sleep could imagine the mid-ocean ridge stretching in darkness, not as a line in a textbook, but as a long seam of creation. They could imagine a robot gliding over sediment, its lights soft and patient. They could imagine a whale passing far above an abyssal plain, its sound traveling through water older than memory. They could imagine a cable carrying human voices across the floor of the sea, while nearby, an animal with a transparent body pulses slowly through the black. These images would not need to be dramatic to be powerful. The deep ocean is already dramatic by existing. Its drama is not speed, but scale. Not violence, but pressure. Not noise, but the absence of ordinary human sound. It is a place where a single light can feel like a fire in a cathedral, where a small vehicle becomes a wandering star, where a fish crossing the beam can seem like a message from another version of Earth. The explored ocean would teach humans to notice low-intensity wonder, the kind that does not demand attention, but rewards surrender. And surrender is part of sleep, not defeat, but trust. The mind loosens its grip on the day. Thoughts sink and separate. The room grows less important. The body remembers gravity. Breath becomes the nearest tide. In that softened state, the ocean is easy to imagine, because it, too, is a world of layers. Surface thoughts ripple and flash. Below them, deeper feelings move more slowly. Below those, old fears rest in darkness. And somewhere even deeper, there is a quiet plain where nothing has to be solved before
Morning. The ocean, fully explored, would still hold that metaphor. Humans could map its floor and monitor its currents, but no map would remove its power to carry the mind downward. Perhaps this is because exploration is never only about information. It is about changing the space inside imagination. Before, the deep was a vague darkness. Afterward, it becomes a detailed darkness, filled with forms, processes, and lives. Both can invite sleep, but the second carries a different peace. It says, The world is stranger than you feared and more ordered than you knew. As night passes over the planet, the sea receives the darkness without effort. Moonlight lies on the surface where clouds allow it. Waves move across harbors, reefs, shelves, and open basins. Far below, no moonlight arrives. There are only the glows made by animals, the heat of vents, the listening instruments, the drifting particles, the ridges, the plains, and the trenches. Some human machines continue their work quietly, recording, waiting, conserving energy, sending occasional signals upward. They are small presences in a vast patience, reminders that curiosity can be gentle when it learns to move slowly. On land, people turn in their sleep. Some are near the sea and hear it faintly through windows. Some are far away and know it only as an idea. Yet all of them live on a planet shaped by ocean. The explored sea does not need everyone to think about it at once. It is enough that the knowledge exists, that the maps are kept, that the images remain, that choices are made with a little more awareness than before. Civilization may still be restless, but beneath it lies a slower teacher, dark and immense, asking for attention without raising its voice. If the entire ocean were explored, the final discovery might be that there is no final discovery. There is only relationship, continuing through time. More watching, more learning, more restraint, more humility, more nights when a person imagines the seafloor and feels their own worries drift upward like bubbles, becoming smaller as they rise. The ocean remains below, not conquered, not emptied of mystery, but newly present in the human heart. It becomes part of the way Earth is loved, not because it is fully understood, but because at last it has been truly seen. And now the imagined submersible is rising again. The water outside shifts from black to deep blue, from deep blue to a faint and tender glow. The pressure lessens. The instruments hum. The crew says little. Above, the surface waits like a silver ceiling, trembling softly under the night. For a moment, the vehicle hangs between worlds, carrying darkness upward and memory with it. Then it breaks into air, and the ocean closes behind it, smooth and quiet, as if nothing has happened at all. But something has happened. Somewhere below, the lights have passed over stone, life, sediment, and silence. Somewhere in the human mind, the map has changed. The beach is no longer just the edge of water. The horizon is no longer an empty line. The planet is deeper now, not physically, but inwardly, because it has been imagined more completely. Under every wave, there is landscape. Under every crossing, there is history. Under every dark surface, there is a world, continuing without hurry. So let the surface grow calm again. Let the ships become small. Let the instruments dim in distant laboratories. Let the sea floor remain where it is, wide and cold and patient, holding its mountains in darkness. Let the animals drift through their own night. Let the currents move through valleys no human foot will touch. Let the last thoughts of the day loosen and fall gently, like marine snow through blue water, settling slowly into quiet. The ocean does not need to be finished. It only needs to be listened to. And in the stillness beneath the waves, the earth keeps breathing in the dark.